Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Jack Ulrich, the CMO here at Cart.com. This is our ongoing and recurring thought leadership series, and today's conversation is one I've personally been really looking forward to. Today we have Eastside Golf joining us. They've done something that I find particularly and genuinely interesting. They didn't grow the game by marketing golf to golfers per se. They built an apparel brand that people genuinely wanted to wear. They found cool and interesting, and the sport just sort of came along for the ride. So that approach has made them one of the most culturally relevant brands in golf right now, I would say. And we're going to get into how that happened, what it actually takes to operate at that level. I'm joined today by Chris Nakatani, President and COO of Eastside Golf, as well as Chris Mehrabi, Chief Delivery Officer here at Cart.com. A quick note on housekeeping before we start. We're recording today and we'll send the replay to everyone that registered. If you have questions, please drop them into the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll get to as many of those as we can. Let's get into it. So Chris Nakatani, we'll try and use last names to keep the difference here. Eastside Golf, like I said in the preamble there, didn't really lead with golf. It led with an apparel brand that wanted to do something cool and different. And there's a really interesting backstory there. I mean, you've got the logo, the collaborations, the aesthetic. It all pulled people in who had no relationship to golf, and in some cases gave people, myself included, a reason to come back to it. The sport was almost secondary in the objective. What was that an intentional strategic bet, or how did you guys discover that path for the business itself?
Well, our founders, Olajuwon Ajanaku and Earl Cooper, are ex-Morehouse golf athletes. And they grew up in the sport, and as children, they always found it to be um, a little bit challenging on the course in terms of what you would wear and all the rules that are applied to golf in fashion, specifically, not just in the sport itself. And so they wanted to create a brand that was inclusive. And that inclusivity in what is probably the most exclusive sport was really their objective. And it wasn't really about trying to bring golf fashion to non-golfers as much as making a sport more inclusive and inviting everybody to play the sport because they felt it uncomfortable in the beginning as they started their journey in the sport as juniors.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even kind of like wearing things you're comfortable with out there as well. Fashion's become a major part of most sports now, basketball in particular, with the Jordan brand kind of kicking things off years and years ago, and then now it's sort of permeated through all the different sports. But as president and COO of Eastside Golf, I mean, you're sitting at the intersection of that brand vision as well as operational execution. What does that actually look like from a day to day at Eastside?
Well, you always have to keep in mind the collaboration with the founders, Olajuwon and Earl, and their vision for the brand and how they want the brand to show up to our consumers out there. So collaborating with them, making sure we're on point in terms of our messaging and our marketing really helps support us in really the message that we're delivering to our consumer. And then operationally, the day-to-day portion of the business is really just the fundamentals of running a retail brand that's direct to consumer, leveraging Cart's expertise, and then also our wholesale distribution, which is the likes of Nordstrom and Dick's Sporting Goods and Golf Galaxy.
Yeah, and you guys have done a lot in, I would say, pushing the boundaries of fashion and sort of golf apparel and what is sort of wearable on the course in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of creative things on the product side. I remember the swappable swoosh on the Air Maxes that we were chatting about yesterday as a great example of that. How what's sort of the heuristic as you're thinking about these creative bets that you guys how are you going through that decision making process? Are there business parameters that you look at to green light or red light a creative bet? And how do those conversations sort of grow and evolve?
Well, I think that we try and approach it so that fashion is part of the sport and sport is part of the fashion. As men or women, when we go to our closet in the morning, we don't say, well, we're going to wear sport today. We're going to wear something performance. We just want to be stylish, right? And as I highlighted before, the rules of the sport, specifically in the private country club world, can be very strict. And belt loops on pants, as an example, but where we might track to a different tune is that we may put an elastic waist pant and put belt loops on that elastic waist pant so that you could wear it casually as it was intended, comfortable with elastic waist, or put a belt on it because you're going to a private club and that's necessary for the rules of the sport in that private club. And I think that those are the types of things that were unique in terms of how we approach the brand and how we approach fashion for the game.
Chris, I do want to just double down on what Jack mentioned earlier, that swappable swoosh. I mean, I think anybody who's probably from their late teens to their early 30s in the early aughts remembers. I personally remember trying to scrape together change and money to buy multiple pairs of Air Force One so that I had swooshes that matched with the outfit that I was going to wear, right? And like, what a cool innovation to not have to scrounge together that much money. I mean, personally, I tried to start playing golf at some point in my early teens, and having an Afghan immigrant father, he thought the idea of paying hundreds of dollars to go hit a ball with a stick was the craziest thing that he had ever heard of. But part of it was just the total price of playing the game, right? And so being able to reduce that price and allow people to still feel comfortable when they're out there, it's a big innovation in sort of sport tech fashion.
And that's what makes it fun, right? Fashion should be fun. The sport definitely is fun. And to bring that variety and the ability to have that variety to your outfit. We like to say our customer dresses toe to head and they want that outfit to match their shoes.
Mhm.
And so having that ability to have that flexibility is really something very unique and was a lot of fun to play with, certainly.
For anyone who's on the
Yeah.
call who hasn't checked out the merchandise directly, highly recommend you check out the website. Chris can't plug it since I'm the service provider, I can plug it. The products are fantastic. They're fashionable to the point where you just want to wear them even if you don't play the game.
Yeah,
Well,
and
thank you.
candidly, that's I mean, I grew up playing tons of golf and stopped probably 15 years ago or so. And then all these brands, I mean, I was, like I said, very excited for this one because I started catching on to Eastside Golf, and there's a ton of other very like culturally cool brands in the space that are innovating things that are wearable on the course. So it feels less like you're getting dressed up and like masquerading to go play a sport, but more just like casually going out to like practice the thing that you enjoy doing. It felt much more organic. It feels much more fun and a bit like more representative to be able to wear whatever you want on the course that still fits within the guardrails of what's required or allowable depending on the type of course you're on. Um, but yeah, innovation is and like that creative process is such a fascinating endeavor. I mean, Chris Mehrabi. So like when a brand is moving at this fast of a pace, they're doing constant drops. There's new collaborations. There's new vendors that they're collaborating with. There's limited drops. There's innovative product. What does that mean for the commerce infrastructure behind it? How do you keep the operational side from becoming a bottleneck for the creative side?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first, for those of you who don't have the context here, take one step back and just sort of explain our relationship and what we do with Eastside Golf. We manage their e-commerce channel and run the e-commerce business on behalf of Eastside Golf with our partners. In terms of what that means, not just for Eastside Golf, but really for any business, every business has a different cadence, right? Of course, there's similarities across fashion and apparel brands, but every business is going to be unique. And so what we found is really key to success is making sure that we have the right team. We understand the DNA of that company, of the companies that we're partnering with, so that we can build the right operational cadence with our partner. Right? There's no one size fits all solution for any brands. You have to have the right solution for that specific business, and that's what we build in conjunction with our partners.
And I think that collaboration becomes very important in terms of the planning cycle, right? So fashion in and of itself, we tend to plan 9 months in advance because we have to get production into our factory so that we can have it produced and on our website in a timely manner. But then the promotion that is around it, whether it is a branded message that we're trying to deliver or a sale that we're preparing for 4th of July, I think it becomes critically important as we collaborate with the team at CART to make sure that they're on the same page, that this is the message we're trying to deliver for this particular period, and they need to be in step with us to communicate and make sure that the website experience is the same that we're trying to show at our wholesale distribution as well.
And to bring it back to Eastside Golf, well, first I wanted to say, like, Chris and I are really here speaking on behalf of our teams. The cart side of the equation, there's a lot of great people that are really contributing to making Eastside Golf their e-commerce channel a success. If you're listening, Victoria, Matt, Hector, Caesar, thank you for all the hard work that you're doing on this account. And one of the really big insights or levers of growth that this team has partnered with Chris and his team on is product-driven click rate optimization and really expanding the visual merchandising of that site and implementing a really robust A/B testing plan in order to get us right. Whenever time you're partnering with somebody, there's always going to be lots of hypotheses and differing opinions around what's going to work, what's not going to work, what's going to drive success, what's not going to. What we found is the best way to solve and answer those questions is with a robust A/B testing plan that allows us to answer those hypotheses as opposed to just debating them and actually get data to verify what's right, what's not right, what's working, and what's not working. And that team played a huge role in implementing that plan and making that a success. So thank you very much.
And I think also when you think about CART's diverse portfolio, right, it really helps us learn from some of their other partners. What are the best practices? What are some of your other partners doing well that's creating a better experience for the consumer? And how can we implement that on our website? And I think we find that information very critical to our decision making.
Yeah. And I mean, as you guys are scaling, Chris Nakatani, you guys have scaled in such a way with a fairly remarkable agile internal team. As you're scaling and bringing on different vendors and partners and suppliers and whatnot, how do you think about what stays in-house versus what you build through those partners and other collaborators and third-party vendors? And how does that shape your role specifically across merchandising and operational performance?
Well, I think the most important part of our business and our product is the brand and maintaining the brand message. And that's really what we have to control. Everything else in terms of the operational side, the professionalism, we can outsource as long as we control the brand and the message. So to leverage CART's, they're the pros. As I speak internally all the time to the team, is lean on the pros. They do it better than us. They know how to do it. They can attract better talent because we're not a direct-to-consumer behemoth, much like the Amazons and the Targets of the world. And the consumer doesn't give us a break. The consumer wants the same experience as they would as if they're shopping on an Amazon website. They want the delivery at the same time. They want the experience at the same time, the speed of checkout. We, as product developers, designers, brand messengers, we can't have that same expertise or have that same expectation that we're going to attract the talent to create that same expertise and experience for the consumer. So that's where we lean on professionals like CART.
Yeah, that's a good so like with you guys being the arbiters of really the content and the brand vision and whatnot. So Chris Mehrabi, I mean, once we have that information, it becomes things that feed into the different channels. I mean, you've got paid media, organic, social, site merchandising, customer service, all those different things that are deeply impacted by the customer voice, the company voice, covering a ton of surface area there. When you're handling that much and you're trying to stay true to the brand's voice, what has to be true for that to actually work? How do we kind of make all the puzzle pieces fit together?
Yeah, that's a great question. The main thing that has to be true, and really the first thing for any of the other, as Chris mentioned, We've got great e-commerce expertise in-house, but there's no substitute and no replacing the brand voice. And there's no replacing or no substituting the partnership between the brands and us and us, and really being informing and becoming an extension of that, of our client's business, right? And that partnership, that communication is really critical and key for anything else to work. Now, the nice thing, assuming that once that's there and once that's in place, the great thing about working with Cart is that all of those functions, all of those processes that previously, if you're working with vendors and other partners and other BPOs or agencies, that you had to deal with, 4, 5, 6, 7 different vendors. With Cart, there's one throat to choke, so to speak, right? And not just that, but more importantly, the functions can coordinate and talk to each other. And so we don't do the fulfillment for Eastside Golf, but that, for example, if there's an issue with fulfillment, we can prep customer service. If there's a sale going on the website, we inform customer service and we can plan everything together internally so that that's not having to run through you and your business and run through the operations of your brand.
And
Yeah.
candidly, our approach is it's not Cart, it's Eastside Golf. It's one team. We get out of it what we put into it. And if there are true partners, there shouldn't be two separate companies. It's really one mission. And I think we are all aligned in terms of our incentive is to grow the top line. And that's the goal. And we're all aligned on how we can build a better experience so that we can capture the consumer.
Yeah, and I know Chris's team takes that very seriously as stewards of the brand and almost like fractional employees of the brands themselves to help make those operations work and work towards the same goals. Chris Mehrabi, when a brand is involving Cart.com so deeply into their commercial operations, where are some areas where those things can go wrong and like there's areas to watch out for? And what are you watching out for?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the biggest watch out, honestly, is communication and clarity of mission, clarity of targets, clarity of priorities, right? Chris just mentioned a second ago that everybody's aligned around growing the top line. Okay? That's built into our business relationship, that's built into our partnership, it's built in how we monitor the business, and it's built into how we measure success. There are other organizations where, hey, maybe we're really focused on growing the bottom line. Maybe we have some combination of goals. And so the key and first most critical piece is making sure that those communication doors are open, that there is a alignment on the go forward plan, and that there is a clear and shared strategy. It's funny to say, or maybe surprising to say, but there are a lot of businesses out there that don't have that maybe don't know what they want to be, quote unquote, when they grow up. And so forcing those conversations up front, making sure that there is a clear direction, a clear set of goals, clear set of accountabilities that is reinforced from a commercial point of view, that's key to making the relationship work. And that's what the foundation is built on.
Yeah, I'm curious, I guess, Chris Nakatani, around. So I think the way that you guys have evolved the apparel game for golf, like we've talked about, is really interesting collaborations, limited drops. It's similar to like how I think like Kith or Hidden have done those types of things in the past for just apparel at large, and sometimes going into like different specific areas. But what is sort of the right mix of limited drop and collaboration and like ongoing items that creates like a good merchandising portfolio for a brand like Eastside Golf?
Well, I think that when you approach a collaboration, it's a mutual opportunity to grow your awareness and grow your audience. So I think that's first and foremost, right? Is that will this bring a different audience to our customer base, and how can we support our collaborative partner? Secondly, it's complementary to the brand mission, and how can we then be mutually beneficial in terms of our brand mission and our brand message? And I think those two things become the most important, and product almost secondary, because product obviously is king, but if those two aren't mutually aligned, then the objective and the goals aren't met, and you lose the message for one of the brands. And it has to be a mutual growth for both brands. Otherwise, it just doesn't work and benefit the greater good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys have done an amazing job of doing the right collaborations, getting the Swingman logo on the bottom of the Air Max, for example, and doing a bunch of other interesting things to keep it organically Eastside Golf while delving into the Jordan brand or Nike or others. Um, I think the risk with any partnership at this scale is like kind of what we talked about is the brand voice getting diluted or things starting to feel generic, which could potentially be even worse. How do you go about protecting that with, I mean, for example, things like getting the swingman on the bottom of the shoe was a great idea, but like, what are some of the guardrails you actually put in place to ensure that you guys keep things true to the brand?
Well, I think our primary message is inclusivity, to the sport. And again, reiterating how exclusive the sport is. When you take a look at the Swingman logo, it's an artist rendering of our founder Elijah Janaku, and it's his ability to reach a much broader audience than would have maybe considered playing the sport, and making those rules a little bit less daunting, if you will, and allowing an individual to play the game on a municipal course and wear what they want to wear. And I think that really is the beauty of the brand, and making sure that we have those guardrails in place so that we stay on message.
Yeah.
We just recently did a community day in outside of Philadelphia, and it's really an opportunity to invite a broad audience of people, some people that play the game every weekend, others that have never held the club. And it's an opportunity to engage and invite them in to a sport which is so exciting and so dynamic and can be so much fun and very frustrating too.
Yes. Highly frustrating on bad days. Um, Chris Mehrabi, I mean, the commerce services partnerships, we've talked quite a bit about this, but they only work if the partner is truly embedded in the brand's strategy, part of their DNA, really, an operating member of the team or members of the team, not just ones that are executing tasks, but bought in on a strategic level. How do you get how do you build that kind of operating relationship? I mean, obviously the client has to like let you in a little bit, but how do you build that relationship? How do you convince them that it's a plunge worth taking? And how long does it actually take to build that mutual trust?
Well, convincing them it's a plunge worth taking, there's a whole sales team dedicated to talking to people about that. But so usually I'm coming in more at the point where we're trying to talk about how I actually make this work, right? And make the actual operational relationship work day to day. And as I've mentioned, and as Chris has mentioned, it is really critical that the brand voice and that the top down direction come from the brand, and we're there to support on the e-commerce side. From driving traffic, building out your sites, driving conversions, and servicing your customers after they receive those packages. I wish I could say that there's a science to building that relationship. I wish I could boil it down to a checklist. I've tried a lot, and we have some. We certainly have key milestones that we look for as we're onboarding a client. But like any other team that you're building, any other business that you're building, there's going to be some process of storming, forming, and norming, and making sure that we have a cadence and an operation and a way that we operate and run this business that works with the DNA of both brands, right? In both companies, right? We're a B2B brand. We're not a consumer brand, of course, but like every business, we have what we're great at. We have our brand. We have the skills of the people that we hire. We bring into this company to run these businesses. And so merging those two, melding those two, and building that cadence, it's a little bit of a process, and it's a combination of art and science, right? And it goes back to, and that's one of the reasons I keep harping on it, but that's one of the reasons it comes back to the partnership, come back to the communication, and come back to making sure that there is top-down alignment between organizational leaders to making this partnership a success. Because it's not a pure science, it is a combination, and we do have to take into account the specifics of each and every business that we're serving.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Chris Nakatani, I guess a couple more questions before we dive into Q&A here. But and just a plug for everybody in the audience, if you have questions for anybody on the panel today, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A feature. So if you're talking to, I guess, if we're going to leave some tea leaves for some of the brand operators in the room here, if you're talking to one of them and they're at an inflection point where they're growing very fast, their infrastructure is proving to be a bit brittle, starting to strain, what's the one thing you'd tell them that isn't so obvious until you've lived it? What's a key learning that they should be looking out for?
I would say don't be afraid of outsourcing. Don't outsource your brand, don't outsource your design, but allow pros to come in and support you. They've been in the business for much longer than we have. They're experts at the business, this being CART. Allow them the latitude to provide direction as long as the goals are aligned. You know, Chris mentioned the transition, but one of the things we requested was an immersion into our brand. And they stayed the first week of our relationship in our offices, feeling the product. This is a touch and feel business. You have to feel the product, live the brand, and immerse yourself in the culture of the company because the brand message is so important for Eastside Golf, that immersing yourself into the brand becomes very important so that you really understand the brand message. And then that just is extended into the website experience itself.
Yeah, that's a great lesson learned. I think you touched on something there too around or earlier around the origins of Eastside Golf. Just to put you on the spot here a little bit, because I think it's fascinating. As a firm believer that constraint creates opportunity, do you want to talk just a bit about like how the brand got started and what sort of the impetus was for starting the brand itself? I think it's fascinating.
Well, yeah. I mean, Elijah and Earl were golf teammates at Morehouse College. They won a national championship at Morehouse College. Elijah wanted to turn pro. He couldn't find sponsors, so he created a brand and a company to sponsor himself. And he's now trying to get his tour card. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time. It's a great message in terms of perseverance for a dream.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're very entrepreneurial here at Cart.com, so we love when people bet on themselves and bet big, and he certainly did, or they did, I guess, and it's worked out massively for them. So major hats off to you and the founders. Through the Q&A feature here, we got a question. So, what's one thing your customers care way more about now than they did when the brand was started 3 years ago?
Well, I think, it always comes down to quality of the product, quality of the experience, quality of the customer service. And I think they continue to appreciate how we enhance our website, how we enhance the experience of the website, and how we always focus on the product and delivering that product and delivering against the message for the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the questions here too is around seasonality. So, how does seasonality affect your business? Do you find that you have to pivot through the winter months where not as much of the country is able to golf as often, or how do you plan for the seasonality if there is a seasonality aspect?
Well, thank heaven for the indoor simulator. Um, so, in the Northeast, we have the indoor simulators now, so people can play year round. But certainly, seasonality plays an impact, on a regional basis. When you take a look at our Shopify data, it's really the metro areas that are the most active for us in terms of commerce. So the Chicago's, the Miami's, the Los Angeles, the Dallas, those locations continue to support the brand and the commerce of the brand. And so the seasonality becomes important, but we gear up for the spring season, but we're also a great gift. I have said multiple times, our goal should be when you open up a Christmas box or a birthday present or a holiday gift, that you open it up and it's Eastside Golf and people really enjoy that. and say that that's a really nice gift. And that's really the experience we're trying to convey to our consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I'll just add this one. What has been your favorite drop so far out of everything that Eastside's created, or maybe item or drop?
Well, I think the excitement and the activity around our Nike collaborations it is really exciting to see the lift in traffic to our website. And it doesn't have to just be a collaborative shoe. It could just be a Jordan shoe that we drop that's in their main line. But to see that activity and the overall traffic pattern of the consumer and how that then sheds light on our apparel and how we then hook our apparel up to the color scheme of that footwear becomes very exciting to see the consumer ultimately engage in it. You know, the fun thing about planning is when it works, it is so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris Mehrabi, I'm curious what your take is here. I could posture a guess at your favorite item, but yeah, let's hear it.
There's a few, and it's hard not to be biased by the footwear, which draws quite a lot of attention. But two of my favorites are the East Side Air Maxes, one of my favorites. I mean, I think they sort of harken, they remind me of these for, I wouldn't classify myself as a sneakerhead, but maybe for sneaker fans in the audience, if you remember the old Dan O'Briens or the CR7s, it's not the same design, but the overall Air Max look and feel kind of reminds me of those. And the mules, the Air Jordan mules, which I recently ordered because they look incredibly comfortable and are going to be my new around the neighborhood shoes. Even not a huge golfer, but as I said earlier in the webinar, these shoes are stylish enough that you'll want to wear them regardless of whether or not you're wearing them for golf.
Yeah, and that's I think that's one of the magical things that Eastside has done here is get people so excited about the apparel that uh, they either get interested or don't want to feel like a poser, so they start playing golf again, just so that they can feel like they're part of the group. Okay, so I think we've gone
Yeah,
through. Yeah, go ahead.
Jack, our founders will say there are a lot of people that wear polo players that have never picked up a polo mallet.
That's true. Yeah, that is absolutely true. All right. Okay. I think we'll wrap it there. Chris and Chris, thank you both so much. This was a great conversation. If you guys want to learn more about Eastside Golf, please head to eastsidegolf.com. And if you want to learn more about what cart.com does to support brands like Eastside with our commerce services, please reach out to us on cart.com. We'll have the recording in your inbox shortly. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
everybody.
much.
Thanks, Jack.